This includes the COVID-19 pandemic, climate change, the global economy and foreign policy. The US, Britain, Canada, France, Germany, Italy and Japan issued a 25-page communique at the end of the summit. Here are the highlights. One of the most important issues was the COVID-19 pandemic. The leaders called for a new COVID origin probe. They vowed to end the pandemic and prepare for possible future outbreaks. They adopted a pact called the Carbis Bay Declaration. It aims to strengthen their collective defenses against future health threats. They committed to donating 1 billion vaccine doses for the next year. This takes their combined pledge to providing vaccine shots to 2 billion.
Thank you very much, everybody.
We haven't had access to the laboratories to determine whether or not, I have not reached a conclusion because our intelligence community is not certain yet, whether or not this was a consequence of from the marketplace of a bat and interfacing with animals in the environment that caused this COVID-19, or whether it was an experiment gone awry in a laboratory. It's important to know the answer to that because we have to have access. We have to build a system whereby we can know when we see another lack of transparency might produce another pandemic. We have to have access. The world has to have access. So we're trying to figure out at the G7 whether we could put together an international basis upon which we could have a bottom line with what the transparency accounted for.
Now, climate change and the environment also dominated discussions at the G7 summit. The group promised a green revolution that cuts emissions, halts and reverses biodiversity loss. This comes ahead of the key COP26 UN climate summit in November. Leaders reaffirmed pledges to going carbon neutral by 2015. They vowed to phase out the use of coal. Leaders also pledged to conserve and protect at least 30% of the world's land and ocean waters by 2030. Environmental groups and experts have criticized the G7 communique. They said it failed to set up agenda for COP26. Now, foreign policy was one of the major points of discussion. G7 summit saw US President Joe Biden pushing for a stronger collective stance towards China and Russia. The group announced to build back better world drive to invest in developing countries. This was in a direct bid to counter Beijing's Belt and Road Initiative. US also led the group to call on China to respect human rights and fundamental freedoms. Leaders acknowledged alleged forced labor practices in Xinjiang and the ongoing political turmoil in Hong Kong. The G7 backed Taiwan and demanded freedom of navigation in the South China Sea. The slam cracked down on opposition in Belarus and military coup in Myanmar. Leaders also urged Russia to end what they called destabilizing behavior.
What unites the countries gathered here this weekend, not just the G7, but Australia, India, South Africa and South Korea, who have joined us, and I should say in India's case, joined us virtually, are not just our resolve to tackle climate change, but also our democratic values. It's not good enough for us just to rest on our laurels and talk about how important those values are. And this isn't about imposing our values on the rest of the world. What we as the G7 need to do is demonstrate the benefits of democracy and freedom and human rights to the rest of the world.
Now, the G7 leaders also discussed economic issues. They endorsed a plan to introduce a global minimum corporate tax rate of 15%. They vowed to champion freer, fairer trade through reforms. Leaders talked about sustaining their pandemic recovery plans with continued investment. Creating jobs, investing in infrastructure and innovation became a focal point. Now, WION correspondent Sarah Walton sent us this report from New York.
Well, yes, this first face-to-face meeting between Joe Biden and Vladimir Putin since President Biden won the White House, due to take place in Geneva on Wednesday. And I think we can probably safely say that it's going to be a pretty frosty meeting. No love lost between these two leaders. A real war of words between them since Joe Biden won the presidency of the United States. And Joe Biden called Vladimir Putin a killer at one point. Joe Biden has said that he is going into this meeting to use strong words with Vladimir Putin. He's already said that he intends to bring up issues such as allegations of human rights abuses. One of the other issues which has recently come to the forefront, though, that Joe Biden we expect Joe Biden to address, is also issues of cybercrime. There's been some high-profile incidents in the United States where hackers were able to stop businesses from operating. We expect that to come up. Nevertheless, Joe Biden has also said that he is going there to try to find areas where the two leaders can come to an agreement, where they can possibly cooperate, work together, in order to put the two countries on the path to closer relationships, if not now, then somewhere down the line.